Well, kicking off the so-called Super Week of Diplomacy, South Korea's top office says that President Moon Jae-in participated in the two-day virtual ASEAN Plus 3 summit that ends Wednesday. It served as a chance for South Korea to underscore its new southern policy aimed at deepening the strategic partnership with ASEAN members. Well, he also participated with an 18-member meeting of the East Asia Summit to highlight Seoul's efforts towards sustainable economic development, including the so-called Green New Deal. He's then to make a three-nation European trip for a G20 summit in Italy, the COP26 climate summit in Britain, as well as a state visit to Hungary.
Calls for collective action on the development of cleaner energy and strengthened pledges toward carbon neutrality. Is it going to be emphasized again this time?
You're right. So what was agreed upon at this year's G20 summit is expected to be discussed in further detail at the COP26 summit, the UN climate change conference of the parties slated to be held in Glasgow. The President Moon Jae-in is scheduled to deliver a keynote speech during the COP26, which will be held from October 31st to November the 12th. He is to disclose his administration's ambitious roadmap to sharply reduce South Korea's greenhouse gas emissions by 40%, which is a steep increase from its initial 26.3% reduction in NDC target by 2030 from the 2018 level. It's largely expected that the COP26 will gather leaders' pledge to accelerate action towards the goals of the Paris Agreement and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and build upon what was previously agreed upon at the P4G summit, which was hosted in Seoul in May of this year.
Apart from the climate change issue, state leaders are also expected to touch upon a host of other pressing issues stemming from the pandemic and a chain reaction ensuing from it. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so first of all, the pandemic has put the global supply chain in tatters, threatening an end to an era of low cost and endless variety for consumers. The leaders are now more motivated than ever to battle this virus altogether as the world economy has been hit hard by the prolonged pandemic. Well, experts say that three big forces are driving this latest crisis, that is, COVID-19, climate, and geopolitics. So these are expected to be the key sticking points during the back-to-back summit talks the president will attend. And global supply chain disruptions around the world were exacerbated as many countries carried out strengthened virus control measures. Well, in particular, all these three factors are seen to have played a big part in the current semiconductor shortage that has crippled automotive production worldwide, while the COVID-19-driven demand for consumer electronics keeps on climbing. So we're expected to hear from the world leaders on how they are going to tackle the coronavirus vaccine production and equitable distribution, which largely is considered lacking a coordinated global effort at this point.
Thanks for the rundown. We'll see you next week.
My pleasure.
개독국 간의 협력을 이끄는 가교국가로서의 역할을 부각시킬 것입니다.
South Korea continues its efforts to diversify its diplomacy under the Moon Jae-in administration. The goal is to achieve South Korea's flagship foreign policy initiatives, including the Korean Peninsula's denuclearization and peace process.
대화와 협력이 평화를 만들어낼 수 있다는 것이 한반도에서 증명